Most people think millionaires live in large houses, drive luxury cars, and live lifestyles that clearly signal success. Thomas Stanley and William Danko thought so too, until they actually studied millionaires. In The Millionaire Next Door, the authors spent years interviewing and analyzing thousands of real millionaires across the United States. Not celebrities, not inheritance cases, but ordinary people who quietly accumulated wealth. What they found was unexpected. Most millionaires don't look wealthy, they don't live flashy lives, and they don't spend the way most people assume rich people do. This book is about what wealth actually looks like in real life and why so many high earners never build it. In this video, we'll walk through the core lessons from The Millionaire Next Door and connect each one to financial habits and pressures many people experience every day. Lesson 1. Most millionaires live ordinary lives. One of the first surprises in the book is where millionaires actually live. Stanley and Danko found that most millionaires do not live in wealthy-looking neighborhoods. Instead, they often live in middle-class suburbs, small towns, or quiet neighborhoods with modest homes. The authors describe visiting neighborhoods where the houses look average, the cars are practical, and nothing signals extreme wealth. Yet many residents had net worths well over $1 million. These people weren't hiding their wealth out of fear. They simply didn't feel the need to display it. In contrast, the authors describe what they call prodigious consumers, people who live in expensive homes, lease luxury cars, and spend heavily to maintain an image of success. Ironically, those households often had very little wealth. The lesson is uncomfortable but important. Wealth is often invisible. Consumption is visible. If you judge success by appearances, you'll misunderstand who is actually doing well financially. Lesson 2. High income does not mean high wealth. One of the most revealing parts of the research focused on high-income professionals. Stanley and Danko found many doctors, lawyers, and executives earning large salaries but accumulating surprisingly little wealth. To prove this, they used a simple wealth test. The formula is to multiply your age by your pre-tax annual income and divide by 10. This number is your target net worth. If you have accumulated twice the target amount, you are a prodigious accumulator of wealth. If your net worth is half the target amount, you are an under-accumulator of wealth. For example, let's say you're 50 years old and you earn $100,000 a year. Using the formula, 50 times 100,000 divided by 10 equals $500,000. So if your net worth is around $500,000, you're on track. If your net worth is about $1 million or more, you would be considered a prodigious accumulator of wealth. But if your net worth is closer to $250,000 or less, you would fall into the under-accumulator category. However, this formula is less applicable to very young people or those who just received a massive salary spike, as wealth needs time to catch up to income. The authors describe households earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that had low savings, high debt, and constant financial pressure. Why? Because higher income often leads to higher expectations. Bigger homes, private schools, luxury vehicles, frequent upgrades, spending expands to match income. At the same time, the authors found many millionaires who earned far less but saved consistently over decades. They weren't chasing prestige. They weren't upgrading constantly. They simply lived below their means for a long time. The lesson is clear. Income helps, but it does not create wealth. Wealth is built by what you don't spend. Lesson 3. Spend less than you make every year. This lesson sounds simple, but the book shows how uncommon it really is. Stanley and Danko found that real millionaires are disciplined about spending even when they don't have to be. They budget, they plan purchases, they negotiate prices, they delay gratification. The authors share stories of millionaires who drive the same car for many years, avoid impulse buying, and think carefully before increasing expenses. This isn't about being cheap. It's about being intentional, Most people treat saving as whatever is left at the end of the month. Millionaires treat saving as non-negotiable. They pay themselves first and live on the remainder. Over time, that habit does more than income ever could. Lesson 4. Avoid status spending. One of the strongest patterns in the book is how little millionaires care about status symbols. Stanley and Danko describe interviewing wealthy individuals who intentionally avoided luxury brands, designer clothing, and expensive cars, not because they couldn't afford them, but because they saw them as poor uses of money. Meanwhile, many people who felt pressure to look successful spent heavily on items that impressed others but quietly damaged their finances. The authors point out that status spending mostly benefits everyone except the buyer. The dealer earns commission, the brand earns prestige, the image improves, but wealth does not. Millionaires understand that admiration is short-lived, but financial independence lasts. Lesson 5. Choose a lifestyle that makes wealth easier. Stanley and Danko observed that many millionaires deliberately designed their lives to reduce spending pressure. They chose neighborhoods where modest homes were normal. They socialized with people who didn't compete through consumption. One story describes families who could easily afford larger homes but stayed put for decades, simply because upgrading would increase expectations and spending in every area of life. The authors emphasize that environment matters. When everyone around you is upgrading, spending discipline feels like sacrifice. When moderation is normal, saving feels natural. The lesson is subtle but powerful. Your lifestyle choices can either fight your wealth goals or quietly support them. Lesson 6. Financial independence matters more than luxury. Throughout the book, the authors consistently found that millionaires valued independence over indulgence. They cared less about luxury and more about freedom from debt, control over their time, and peace of mind during uncertainty. Many interviewees expressed pride not in what they owned, but in what they didn't owe. They wanted flexibility. They wanted options. They wanted to avoid financial stress. This explains why many millionaires look ordinary. They're not trying to impress, they are trying to stay free, and that mindset compounds quietly over a lifetime. Lesson 7. Many millionaires are self-employed or business owners. One of the clearest patterns in the book is how many millionaires work for themselves. Stanley and Danko found that a large percentage of millionaires were small business owners, contractors, entrepreneurs, or professionals running their own practices. These were not flashy startups or high-risk ventures. They were often boring, unglamorous businesses: plumbers, landscapers, auto repair owners, small manufacturers, distributors, and service providers. The authors describe business owners who quietly built wealth by owning predictable, cash-generating businesses over decades. This matters because ownership provides a massive defensive advantage: tax control. While employees are taxed on nearly every dollar they earn, business owners can often reinvest profits or deduct expenses before their income is taxed. In the book's view, taxes are the single largest expense for most households, and millionaires are experts at minimizing them. The lesson isn't that everyone should quit their job. It's that ownership creates leverage that income alone rarely does. Lesson 8. Millionaires invest conservatively and consistently. Another surprising finding was how conservatively most millionaires invest. They weren't chasing hot stocks. They weren't timing markets. They weren't speculating aggressively. Stanley and Danko describe millionaires who favored simple, long-term investments and avoided unnecessary complexity. Many invested steadily in businesses they understood, diversified assets, and long-term market exposure. They avoided strategies that sounded impressive but required constant attention. This resonates with a common challenge many people face. Complex strategies feel productive. Simple strategies feel boring. But boring when repeated consistently, often wins. Millionaires understood that avoiding big mistakes mattered more than hitting home runs. Lesson 9. Millionaires are disciplined, not lucky. Stanley and Danko repeatedly emphasized that most millionaires didn't experience sudden breakthroughs. They didn't inherit large sums. They didn't win lotteries. They didn't stumble into massive windfalls. Instead, they followed disciplined habits year after year. They saved consistently. They invested patiently. They avoided debt-driven lifestyles. The authors describe households that slowly accumulated wealth over 20 or 30 years, almost unnoticed by outsiders. This lesson speaks directly to frustration many people feel today. Slow progress feels discouraging. Steady effort feels unrewarded. But wealth, as the book shows, is often the result of unexciting decisions made consistently. Lesson 10. Family habits strongly influence wealth. One of the most revealing sections of the book looks at how families shape financial outcomes. Stanley and Danko found that many millionaires grew up in households that emphasized responsibility, self-reliance, and discipline. Parents didn't bail children out financially. They didn't subsidize lifestyles. They taught budgeting, saving, and accountability early. In contrast, the authors describe families where high-earning parents supported adult children financially for years. Those children often struggled to build wealth themselves. This lesson can be uncomfortable. Helping too much can unintentionally prevent growth. Millionaire parents focused less on giving money and more on teaching habits. Lesson 11. Economic outpatient care can destroy wealth. Stanley and Danko introduce a powerful term, economic outpatient care. This refers to financially supporting adult children on an ongoing basis. The authors found that adult children who received regular financial assistance tended to save less, earn less, and accumulate less wealth. Not because they were lazy, but because the pressure to become independent was removed. Meanwhile, children who were expected to stand on their own often developed stronger financial discipline. This lesson resonates with many families today. Support feels loving, but long-term dependence can be damaging. The book isn't arguing against helping in emergencies. It's a warning against support that becomes a permanent substitute for responsibility. Lesson 12. Millionaires avoid debt as a lifestyle. Another consistent finding was how carefully millionaires treated debt. They used debt sparingly, if at all. They avoided high-interest consumer debt. They paid off homes early or bought modest homes relative to income. Stanley and Danko describe millionaires who saw debt not as a tool for comfort, but as a risk to independence. This contrasts sharply with modern culture, where debt is normalized as a way to upgrade lifestyles quickly. Millionaires understood something simple. Debt reduces flexibility, and flexibility is priceless. Lesson 13. Wealth builders plan their lives, not just their money. Stanley and Danko noticed something subtle but consistent among millionaires. They didn't just track investments. They planned how they wanted their lives to look. They set long-term goals. They thought ahead about spending, saving, work, and family decisions. They revisited those plans regularly and adjusted as circumstances changed. Many of the millionaires they interviewed had written budgets, clear priorities, and a strong sense of what they were saying yes to and what they were saying no to. A key finding in the research is that millionaires spend significantly more time, nearly twice as many hours per month, managing and researching their investments than the average person does. This kind of planning wasn't about control for the sake of control. It reduced stress. When money decisions were already thought through, there was less second-guessing, less impulse spending, and fewer regrets. Instead of reacting to pressure in the moment, they acted with intention. Planning didn't limit their freedom. It protected it. Lesson 14. Being wealthy is about behavior, not intelligence. One of the most important conclusions in the book is that most millionaires were not financial geniuses. They didn't rely on complex strategies. They didn't have exceptional IQs. They didn't try to outsmart the market. What they did have was consistent behavior. They lived below their means. They avoided unnecessary debt. They saved regularly. They stayed patient during boring periods and cautious during good times. Stanley and Danko emphasize that wealth building is not about being smarter than everyone else. It's about being more disciplined, more consistent, and more willing to delay gratification. This is an empowering idea because it means building wealth is less about talent and more about habits repeated over time. To recap, The Millionaire Next Door shows that real wealth is rarely loud. It's built quietly by people who live below their means, avoid status spending, and prioritize financial independence over appearances. It shows that high income does not guarantee wealth, that consistent saving matters more than flashy strategies, and that ownership and discipline play critical roles. It explains how family habits shape outcomes, why ongoing financial support can undermine independence, and why avoiding debt preserves freedom. And it makes one idea unmistakably clear. Wealth is not about how much you earn, it's about how you live. The question this book leaves you with is profound. Are your daily habits quietly building wealth or quietly working against it? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. It helps Aspire Reader reach more people who want to improve their lives. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.